I'm Betty Sanders, and I've lived on Silverway Drive, which is near Shoal Creek, for over 40 years. 30 years ago, on Memorial Day in 1981, I experienced something I hope I will never face again. My house, which sits between the creek and the street named Shoal Creek Boulevard, was flooded with at least 5 feet of water inside it. Lots of water and mud and slime rushed into my house. And then, almost as quickly, the water was gone. It was a flash flood, but oh my, what a mess it left. I had just returned from a trip out of town and had run into the rain showers as I neared Austin late Sunday evening. When I got home, I unloaded the car and then sat down to watch the 10 o'clock news. Of course, I quickly fell asleep in front of the TV. The news was over when I woke up to the sound of running water. I jumped up and ran to the front door, jerked it open, and that was a mistake because water as deep, well, about knee deep, rushed in, and it was really hard to close that door. Then I rushed to the phone and called the police department, told them I had water in my house, and they said, "Lady, we don't deal with water problems, call the fire department," which I did. The Austin Fire Department said, "We have all we can deal with right now. Did you know Shoal Creek is flooding?" Well, water was breaking out the windows on the front of my house, and the water was rising rapidly inside and outside. It was beginning to move even the heavy furniture. A big sleeper sofa floated across the room, but got wedged in the doorway and couldn't leave that room. The upright piano floated across the room, ended up across the room upside down in the mud. And in the kitchen, the refrigerator landed on its back in the mud. I could not make my way even to get into the bedrooms because it was such a mess between where I was and how to get in there. But the family room with a sliding glass patio door finally collapsed, and that allowed the water to flow on out of the house. A large overstuffed chair got stuck in that patio door opening, and that kept a lot of smaller items from being washed away. As the water continued to rise, I felt even more frightened. I moved out into the garage, which is on the back of my house, and that's where my car was parked. There was a few inches of water covering the garage floor, but it was easy for me to wade through, and I decided to climb up on the top of the trunk of the car. The windows of the garage doors gave me a good view of what was happening outside in my backyard. I saw one car float down my driveway and right out of my backyard. Then a Volkswagen Bug floated in and became wedged into the corner of the fence by my driveway. And a third car washed in and landed on top of that VW. Then yet another car crashed into the front of the house where it took out a wrought iron support that held up the front porch. As I sat on the car in that garage, the water continued to rise and even began to enter the car. When the car began to sway with me sitting on top of that trunk, I could feel it just slightly, but it was enough to make me feel that I needed to relocate myself. I looked around for a safer place to go when I noticed the pull-down attic ladder that fell into the garage. Maybe there's my escape hatch. So I got off the car and moved to pull the attic ladder down. The lights were still on in the house, so I could see the water line on the hot water heater that was in the garage. As I looked at that, I noticed the water level was receding. At about that time, I also noticed car lights reflecting on the house next door. I decided to go out of the garage where I could be seen or see someone, whoever was in that vehicle. The walk out was pretty treacherous. It was muddy and slick and slimy. As I got to the corner of the house, I saw a van with that big TV pole on top of it was right on the street at the end of my driveway, and just then I slipped and fell. I called loudly for help, and the reporter, the driver of the TV van, heard me and came to my rescue. Once he had me up and sort of stabilized, he said, "May I take your picture?" And I said, of course, for he had actually just saved my life, I think. That video clip made the news and is often used on the anniversary of this very event. Since the water rolled in, I had been trying to reach my son on the telephone. This was before cell phone days. He was trying to get to my house, but high water on the streets and underpasses had delayed him. Pretty soon a dear friend who lived just a few blocks away over on Steck Avenue came wading in my front door in his high-top rubber boots. He told me the creek was going down and the flooding was about over. That was when the phone rang. My daughter, whom I had been visiting in Dallas, calling to see why I hadn't reported in. Amazingly, the landline phone was still working. I told her we had some water in the house, and she sort of laughed. And then I spied the piano, which startled me, across the room, and I said, "Oh, there's the piano floated by the fireplace." Then that got a pointed, "Mother, what is going on?" When my son David and his wife Sylvia finally made it to my house, they began to help me accept what had really happened. A devastating flash flood had ripped my house apart, and I was in shock. I remember having one possession on my mind, my wedding ring. I had taken it off when I got home earlier, just a couple of hours before the flood, and now my bedroom was in shambles with a thick layer of mud all over that dressing table. Sylvia started digging through that mud, and believe it or not, she found the ring. I was so happy, the most important thing to me. Then my son insisted that I should go to their apartment and spend the rest of the night. What I did not know was that they expected me to sleep on a waterbed that night. Now I tell you, there was no way I could sleep on that watery motion of that bed that night. A couch was just fine. Looking back, it is amazing to me that I remained as calm as I did through all of this. I truly believe my faith in God had never been more real to me. God seemed to be right by my side. The days that followed the flood were filled with more helpers than you can ever imagine. They came with food. They came to clean the house. They came to refurbish. And they even set up a friend's camper in my backyard for me to live in for the next 6 weeks while my house was restored. No one on our street, including myself, had flood insurance. But in my lamenting that fact, one good friend said to me, quote, "I believe you had the best insurance anyone could have." And with that, I must agree. God certainly did take care of me. It was quite an experience.